Thank you very much, dear friends. When discussing human rights, we tend to think about certain very basic principles. One is equality before the law, that everyone should have the same status, same chance in the judicial system, irrespective of poverty or richdom, irrespective of whether we have contacts or not. Basic principle. We also think about the principle of the right to privacy, that the authorities should not interfere unnecessarily into our private life, and our private dignity should be respected by the authorities, another important principle. Women should have all the rights they have the right to, same rights as men, and they should also be able to participate in political decision-making in society. Freedom of expression, absolutely crucial for a democratic society. Freedom of assembly, that we could meet and discuss important matters, another very basic principle in the human rights field. And of course, the right to minorities, that those who are in a minority position should have the protection they need in order to have a decent life in society. I mention these principles also because they are all in the 1921 Constitution of Georgia, the constitution that the Prime Minister mentioned. So you have a long tradition in support of very basic human rights in this country. Of course, the present constitution also refers to basic human rights standards, and that these standards, these norms, should influence the policy of the country. You have ratified already the basic international United Nations, the Council of Europe, conventions and treaties about human rights. The same principles I mentioned from the 1921 Constitution. So we are not here talking about pleasing the European Union when talking about human rights. We are not. We're talking about a long-standing tradition in this country and principles which are there to protect the interest of the Georgian people. That's what is important. And in this discussion about the association agreement with the EU, etc., do not mix up what is important. It's not the question of making people in Brussels happy. It's a question of doing something which is right for people on the basis of the tradition of this country. That's quite important. Of course, there is an international cooperation here, important cooperation, and we know that a similar discussion is going on in many countries, and that we could help one another, we could learn from one another. And frankly, the process that you are involving yourself now into with the end result of a clear strategy to be adopted by the Parliament on principles of human rights, and also an action plan that would be a pledge from the government, ministry by ministry, to implement human rights in reality, not only paper, but really implementation. That is something that will be very important for other countries to learn from. You are, when it comes to planning of human rights, now in the forefront, and you would give something to the other EU countries also here based on your experience. So that is, I think, the real framework of the present situation. Of course, there is a need to be also serious when it comes to human rights, because human rights is not only papers. It's not only trying to formulate the nice wordings or principles. It's a question of hard implementation. And what is good with your process now is that it's not only talk. What you have done already, and there's some work more to be done, I assume, that you have consultation with all the ministries, and including the prosecutor's office, about what they need to do in order to contribute to the overall package of guaranteeing from the government to the Georgian people the safety and freedom that they have the right to have. And that is something quite important. There, I think it's important to try to grasp and to teach to people the real essence of what are human rights. What is it about, except for the various freedoms? Why do we talk about human rights? Because human rights is not everything. It's not everything we want. Human rights are certain very important principles. It deals with important matters. It's a sort of a contract between those in power and the population at large. The principle of human rights is that there are rights for the individuals in society which the authorities, the government, the parliament, the local authority, should meet. So it's a contract between those in power and those living in the country. And that's the essence of human rights. Another basic aspect of human rights is that it refers to all people, not only some people in society, but all people. And that, of course, raises the issue of minorities and vulnerable groups in society. They have also human rights. And if you do look at the, for instance, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, this key document which was adopted by all nations in the United Nations in 1948, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, many of the articles start, everyone has a right to. The message is everyone, everyone. And that, of course, means that one should emphasize the need to avoid discrimination in society. Everyone should feel part of the society. One extremely important convention was recently ratified here in Georgia, namely the right of people with disabilities. They tend to be discriminated for obvious reasons. It's so important that the society tries to give some space also for people with disabilities in the society, so they are welcome. And the problem is really not the disability. The problem is that society tends not to give space and support possibilities for people with disabilities to function in our society. That's a very important dimension of human rights. I think also one element there is when we discuss what to be done to protect human rights, everyone should be allowed to take part in the discussion. And that's why consultation is so important. That's why I hope that there will be a discussion after this meeting with an input from everyone who is interested to make it even better than before. And that's why it's important to have the Parliament adopting the strategy, and that there will be a follow-up when it comes to scrutinizing the government. Have you really implemented the pledges you gave in February, March 2014? One misunderstanding which is around about human rights in many countries is the lack of understanding that economic and social rights are part of the message, part of the whole package of human rights. And in fact, we have learned that if people have not economic and social rights, they tend not to have civil and political rights, freedoms also. So to guarantee a certain level of standard of living is crucial when it comes to human rights. And there is a need here to ensure that in economic crisis periods, which we have today, that this crisis is fairly shared so that all the burden will not be on the poor part of the population, the poorer people in society. That's part of human rights. The Convention on the Rights of the Child, which of course Georgia has ratified early, that convention is a good marker to see to it that all children are welcome in society, that everyone has a real chance to take part in education, that they have the right to food, of course, their economic and social rights. So that's a priority in the document, and it should be a priority. And thanks to UNICEF, it has been given perhaps an extra emphasis in the work. So that is important. So I believe that this is a very good start. You're setting a good example for the outside based on your tradition and your experience. You could be proud so far, but don't give it up. This is not the paper. This is the start of a work which has to continue all the time. Review progress, criticize what is not achieved so far, and assemble the resources to resolve the remaining problems. And of course, this is a terrible responsibility for the Prime Minister to sit in the government which take on this responsibility. But I'm sure that the government will succeed with the help of the society as a whole. The non-governmental organizations, essential. They really are very important in order to help here and to be the watchdogs. The public defender, a marvelous institution, very important to have in a society. And they should also be given all the help to do a competent, good work. You have already now established an office for data protection, also absolutely crucial. All there to help to develop the rights of people. Because human rights is very much a question of checks and balances. There will be a problem, of course, when it comes to resources, but here at least we can have a discussion about allocation of resources in the spirit of what is fair and right for the population in the country. Thank you.